We are expecting to see higher prices for mineral as we get into the fall and even on into the spring booking season of 2022. Most of that's going to be due to kind of the convergence of several factors. You know, one of the things we've been talking about in the farming sector is the rapid rate at which we've seen our fertilizer input prices go up. It's many of the same phosphorus sources that would go into those fertilizer products are also utilized to make beef cattle minerals. Some other factors at play here, you know, just the simple act of moving, you know, commodities across the U.S. in terms of our fuel prices and freight, those are going up as well. Some of the other components that would go into a mineral mix are produced in other countries, and so those are going to be subject to some of the backlogs that we're currently seeing at some of our ports of entry. We know that there's lots of different products out there in terms of the phosphorus levels of minerals, and that's, you know, it used to be historically we'd see a 12% phosphorus mineral. That was pretty common. Today we have a variety of products to choose from that would range from 4% phosphorus all the way up to that traditional 12%. So the first step that I recommend is actually taking into account what we're going to have in terms of our grazed forage resources. And so dormant forage is going to contain less phosphorus than what we would see during the spring or the growing season. The range we would see in Kansas is somewhere between 0.05% phosphorus all the way up to 0.2 and in some instances 0.3. So it can contribute a fair amount to the diet, especially on a cow that's consuming 25 to 30 pounds of native range during the grazing season, depending on whether we're in the fall or we're in the spring. The other source that we often overlook would be our protein supplements. Many of the products that we would use to supplement a cow with protein throughout the winter months also bring a fair amount of phosphorus to the table. Commercial range cubes, if we look at dried distillers grains, if we look at cottonseed meal, corn gluten, those are all going to have, in some cases, a fair amount of phosphorus in them, ranging from 0.75 to even 1% in some cases of phosphorus that would come into the diet. If we look at a mature 1,400-pound beef cow, peak lactation, her phosphorus requirement in terms of grams per day is going to be around 29 grams per day. If we look at 3 pounds of dried distillers grains, that's going to provide about 11 grams of phosphorus per day to that cow. So that's about 37% of that cow's requirement that would come from that byproduct that we're using for protein supplementation. So taking into account those dietary sources of phosphorus can be a good step for producers to look at if they're looking at ways to potentially maybe reduce the cost of their mineral program this fall and into the spring.